if we move on to your sort of your club career, so I suppose it's that transition from playing part time to what now is playing full time. So
Yeah.
you said you started out at Sunderland.
Yeah.
What did the journey look like through each club?
It was difficult. I went from kind of playing at club at Chelsea Street and like winning loads of things and being the best, to going to Sunderland, and there was an older goalkeeper there so she kind of was the first goalkeeper. So I was playing in the reserves for a little bit, but then when she left, I kind of thought, oh well, naturally I should be playing, and that wasn't the case. Like I had to work hard, and that's something probably not that I'd never done before, but it always came so natural. I just kind of like, oh well, this is just what happens. So that was probably my first taste of like not failure, but kind of knowing that you're not the best at something. So yeah, it was kind of like being told that you have to work hard and you have to get better at these different things if you want to play. And yeah, but also work in an environment where you're with women. I think that was probably the biggest eye opener. And I know lots of things have changed within the leagues and whatever, but we was kind of like me, Jill, Steph, etc. were 15, 16 years old, training and working with women that were kind of early 30s, late 20s. And yeah, it was crazy because you were training Tuesday, Thursday night. We used to have such a laugh. But you step on that pitch on a Sunday, and if you did anything wrong, you made a mistake, you were getting it on the pitch, you were getting it after the pitch on the way home. But it helped. I think it helped us grow up. It helped a lot of us mature very quickly, because you knew that you didn't want to let those people down either. Like whether you were captain or the mature players or the leaders of the group, like you just didn't want to let them down. And yeah, at club it was Tuesday, Thursday nights play on a Sunday for Sunderland, and I think even back then it was kind of there was a northern and northern Premier League, southern Premier League. It wasn't a big Premier League, but it was back in the day when Fulham, Charlton were really, really good, and we used to sit on a bus for like 7 hours, get down, we'd stay overnight, and then we'd get smashed like 10-0 off like these teams, and we'd like trudge on the way back, and the girls would get ready and then go on a night out like on a Sunday before they went back to work on a Monday. So it was proper like old school. Like, so I mean, we'd compete with other teams, but when we traveled to Charlton and Fulham, and I think Fulham weren't far off going full time. They were like one of the first teams like going full time around that period of time, and they used to hammer us. Like, so as a goalkeeper, you were like, what have I signed myself up for? Like, it was
you were busy.
Yeah, I was busy. I was picking the ball out the net. I didn't know who to blame, who to point at. Like, we were absolutely defending for our lives constantly, and we travelled down south. And if we got beat like 5-0, we'd all be buzzing coming off, being like, well, we got beat 10-0 last time, so it's an improvement. But yeah, I think it was like a huge eye opener of how far we had to go as well as like a club, or where we were kind of missing things in terms of facilities and support. But yeah, like my journey came to an end when I chose to go to university. So I went to Loughborough. So I had to move to Loughborough, and then that kind of opened the door for wanting to go to Leeds, and that was the next step in my career. And again, it was crazy because I went from playing at Sunderland, where a few of us were young in like England internationals, so we played at like 17s and 19s and stuff. But when I went to Leeds, I was all of a sudden playing with the likes of Sue Smith, Lucy Ward, people that were like had played for England. And it was just like, wow, these are like first team players. I was working with Leanne Hall at the time, who was the England goalkeeper. And it was just like a massive eye opener as to like, wow, this is like the coolest thing ever. But also like, I'm here to do a job, so I need to not act like a fangirl. Because these people are your teammates now. So yeah, but again, we were still Tuesday, Thursday nights, and luckily at Loughborough we trained through the week, and we had goalkeeping coaches coming in and working with us through the week. And that was a program that was I think it was just not stop people going to America on scholarships, but there was a massive pull for a lot of us to want to go to America because you were offered kind of a full-time football scholarship out there, so you got education. And I think the FA clocked on that they were losing a lot of talent who were doing that, would go out there for like 4 or 5 years. So the FA launched a scheme at Loughborough that was similar. So you studied and played, and Mo Marley was in charge then, who was the 19s manager. So you were kind of like, well, if you impressed there, maybe you'd get a look in at 19s and hopefully at senior level. So there was lots going on, and so we used to train maybe twice in a day, and then we'd drive up, a few of us, to Leeds and play and train on a night time, then drive back. and then play at weekends and travel and then come back and study and stuff. So that was pretty cool. But that kind of all ended when I think they looked at maybe launching the league or launching at least the women's senior players on full-time contracts. So that all ended then. So yeah, and then I went on to Chelsea from Leeds, because when we started the full-time WSL, Leeds, we had a really, really good team. I know Rick had big ambitions, wanted to sign lots of players, and our main sponsor, who were Carnegie at the time, pulled out, which left there being no such team as Leeds anymore. And that's when I moved to Chelsea. So my career kind of, everyone at Leeds, who at the time there was Jade Moore, Steph Houghton, Sophie Bradley, Sue Smith, lots of big names, Laura Bassett, like all of a sudden had to go off and find teams, and then lightning struck twice at Notts County.
Yeah, further down the line.
Again, that's another story. It seems to be following me. But yeah, that was kind of like of how I got into kind of club football, but also how it changed from part-time to full-time.
Yeah.
And that was done through the FA mainly, and not the clubs. The FA really pushed for that and give us full-time contracts so that we could effectively try and compete with the likes of America and Germany, who constantly were winning the World Cups and European Cups. We couldn't get close because a lot of us worked full-time or studied and could only train or play once, together as a team, maybe twice a week. So
how did you obviously mentioned Leanne there, and obviously she's doing some great things as a goalkeeper coach now at Arsenal. Playing and training alongside the likes of Leanne and the other England players that you've mentioned, what did that do to your level of, I suppose, exposure to what the level looked like and how you needed to train and how you needed to play to get to where you wanted to get to? Did it make a big difference to you?
Yeah, huge. I think at Leeds, my first season, I was kind of very blasé. I think I was about like 19, 20. So I was, I worked full time. Once I only did a year at Loughborough, and then I went back to working full time. So I actually worked in a call centre, like 8 till 4, 9 till 5. I knew I needed to be on the motorway to get down to Leeds by 7 o'clock from Sunderland. I knew that much. So whenever I could get my shift sorted. But I just knew that the first year I just probably wasn't that interested. I was like, I found it really hard. I had a boyfriend at the time, and socially I was kind of a bit like, I'm having fun at home and whatever. And I know I'm looking back, like I missed a lot of socials when the girls did socials. I didn't go and stuff like that, and I just didn't really buy into it. And then second season, I think I think I hadn't made a squad or something like that at England, and I was kind of like, oh my God, and Rick had pulled me as well and being like, Carls, if you want to be here, if you want to be successful, you need to get your head down, you need to buy into the whole club, the whole ambition, the team and everything. And I just was like, right, you're right. Like, look at the people that are around you. You've got an opportunity to work with someone brilliant. And it was just kind of a big eye opener, and I did, and I had a few injuries. And I had a few injuries along the way. Like really, I kept dislocating my shoulders, and I had to have surgeries and stuff like that. And I think I not used it as an excuse, but kind of was like, I didn't know if I was ever going to get back. So I was kind of like, every time I get fit again, I just get injured. Like, what's the point? And it was just kind of like, right, you've been to World Cup. In 2007, I went to one and I was third choice and I had a great time, but I was just like, what do you want to do? It was kind of a bridge that it was kind of like I could have went one way or the other, I think, and I could have just maybe sacked it off and not really been bothered. But I was just like, oh, you could actually get your head down and work hard, and that's exactly what I did. And I think being part of that Leeds team that was young and ambitious and driven by some of the older players that wanted to, maybe were at the end of their careers or were in the peak of their careers, wanted to do well. You couldn't slack off, and that was it. It was just like head down. And Leanne played a really big part in that because she went through a really difficult time of, I think she'd just come back from breaking her neck. She had a really bad injury, and she was just like, kind of like, if you want it, like, you can get it. But she was just like, I'm not going to do it for you. Nobody else is. You have to do it. And I was just like, oh my God, like I need to get my acting in gear, sort of thing. And that was it. Like I just bought into it, and I don't think I've ever looked back from that point. So it was probably a crossroads that first year in my Leeds career, but we went on to do amazing things, reach FA Cup finals, win League Cups, and we were competing with the Arsenal, the invincible Arsenal era, the Everton champions that win Champions League and winning FA Cups, like that. That was the teams we were competing with, and we were just like little Leeds plodding along. with probably an average age of about 20, 21, and winning games, winning cups. And it was just an amazing kind of franchise to be part of. And it was just such a shame that it kind of had to be disbanded. So yeah, and that was kind of the next chapter in my career, the next decision I had to make.
I think it'll be good to pick up on Rick further down once we get to county, because I think it'd be interesting to see what influence he had on you as a goalkeeper and a player. But so you then joined Chelsea, and you had a period on loan as well out in Australia.
Yeah, so Matt Beard kind of recruited me after Leeds. So we had there was there was loads of changes in the league. We went from kind of like a winter league to summer league and then back to a winter league. So there was lots of changes at clubs, like you say, lots of new franchises in terms of the WSL, which was their first kind of inaugural season. And I got recruited by Chelsea, so I had to move. I moved to London. We weren't full time though, so we still Tuesday, Thursday nights, usually on Cobham. We used to train about 8 o'clock. That's when they'd let us on. So I had to living in London wasn't cheap. Luckily, Vic Akers at Arsenal allowed me to move in with Steph in one of the club houses, but I kind of had to help pay along with that, and my Chelsea wage wasn't going to suffice. So because I worked at T-Mobile in a call centre, I decided to try and find a job in a shop. So I worked in T-Mobile in Hatfield. So I used to work there through the day, and then I used to get in the car in an evening and drive down to Chelsea around the 25. Sometimes used to share with Dunya Susie at the time. We used to drive around there, and Beardy had me for, I think it was 2 seasons. We got to an FA Cup final, which we lost on penalties to Birmingham. And then I again went through a couple of injuries, and I remember speaking to Hope Powell, who was England manager at the time, and I hadn't played much that season. And I think the following season we were going into like a World Cup or a Euros, and I said to her, look, I want to go and play, because we played in the summer. It was possible to go to the likes of Australia in the winter and play in their season. So I begged her. I just said, please, I need to go and play some games. Like, can you just let me go? And she did. So I went to Perth Glory for 3 months. I had a really amazing time with them, amazing season. But sod's law, I went out there injury free and came back with a broken hand after punching Sam Kerr in the head, who we all know very well now. At the time, she wasn't as well known, but I managed to. I come for a cross and punched it, and as I punched the ball, she punched my hand, or vice versa. I punched her head, and completely obliterated my hand. So I had to have surgery on it, and what was meant to be kind of a return from injury and getting some game time slowly turned into a kind of a nightmare where Emma Hayes became the Chelsea manager for the new season, and she released me based on the fact that I hardly trained. Well, I trained when I could, but I had a broken hand, and she couldn't really warrant or see me in her future plans. And I was told that I was no longer required to be there. And fortunately for me, Rick Passmore got the Notts County job, and I was reunited with Rick. It was really turbulent at Chelsea, because it was part-time. It was a good club to be at, but it wasn't. And Emma had come in, and I was captain at the time, and she told me all these plans and how in 5 years' time they were going to be Champions League and all this. And I was thinking, we can't even get in the building. Like, we couldn't even get in to get changed. We were literally allowed on site. We had to park somewhere. We were only allowed on the 3G, 8 o'clock at night. We were off by 9:30. The lights would get switched off whether we'd finished our session or not. And she come in with all these plans, and I was like, oh, great. And then she told me in the summer that actually, well, you're not in those plans, so see you later. And that was it. I was kind of off, and I was devastated, like, because I was having, like I say, a rough time. I'd been injured. I felt like I hadn't been able to prove myself. I was still in and out at England, and I just thought, I was like, what is going on here? Like, I can't even remember what age I was, maybe 24. I was like, where are these years going? Like, I'm not getting where I want to be. It's tough. Like, every time I seem to take one step forward, it's 2 steps back. And it's probably been the story of my career, which is amazing, really. And I get asked lots of questions of why I guess I've stayed around as long as I have. But I guess why not? Like, I love what I do, and and through, I guess, adversity comes strength, and the strength to keep going on. And I always thought I was never going to give up. So when an opportunity came around to work with Rick again, after being so successful at Leeds, I thought, what have I got to lose, sort of thing.
So in terms of, like, you obviously spoke about the ups and downs there of having to deal with different situations, whether it was being released, whether it was going on loan, whether it was a club disbanding.
Mm-hmm.
If you was to give advice to a young goalkeeper coming through now, it's probably situations that you've experienced there that they would have to experience along their career as well, whether it's going on loan or whether being released. What would you say would be some of the biggest I suppose messages that you could give them that would help them deal with those type of situations?
It's probably more the fact that you have an idea of who you are, an identity of who you are and how good you might be, but that's not always what someone else sees. So you could be really good. Like, look at the likes of Joe Hart's a really good example as well. Like, rated one of the best goalkeepers probably in Europe at the time at Man City. And then all of a sudden a new manager comes in and doesn't rate him at all, and he has to go somewhere else to either prove himself or to keep his career going as such. And that can happen to anyone, like at any age group, at any level. There's ways and styles of playing. There are managers that will value as a player and will not value as a player. There are moments in your career where you will feel like you're having a really good season, and there will be moments where nothing seems to be going right. And it's just probably always about having good communication lines, but also having a good kind of a bubble around you, family and friends who can always be honest with you. There's people that you can lean on, coaches, friends, family that you stay in contact with, because it's getting through those moments. There's moments where you will be really, really high and you're having the time of your life, and everyone's really complimentary, but within your career, if it goes on for as long as mine has, which is very long, there will be downs and there will be points where you question whether you're good enough. And family and friends can quickly also be a detriment, because I know my family have been guilty of it, of saying, well, why is she getting picked? She's not good enough. She's not this. She's not that. She's not as good as you. She doesn't do this. And it's kind of like that can slowly seep into you, and you start saying, and into your mindset, and it's like, she isn't as good as me, so why is that? Well, actually, no, you need to look at you, and at the end of the day, it's only you that's going to get you back into the team or back into that squad. And you can't look at what everybody else is doing, because everybody else is different. Like, they have their strengths, they have their weaknesses, but what are your strengths and weaknesses, and how can you make them better? And how can you make your weaknesses better, but how can you make your strengths so strong that nobody else can compete with them? And I think it's about, like, say, it's maybe cliche, but looking in the mirror a lot of the time. It's easy for parents and as a player to look at what everybody else is doing and try and be like someone else, but you're probably never going to be that. You're either going to be better than them by taking what they've got, but getting even better at it and using what you've got, or you're never going to be as good as them, and therefore you will never achieve what you want to achieve, because you're not that person. You have to find what you're good at, find your niche, speak to your coaches, because they're the ones that are going to be honest with you. And sometimes there's some really horrible, hard conversations, but they're also the conversations that make you get better. Someone can always, like, your parents are always they're always like, they're one or the other. Like, my dad's really just like, oh, good game today, and my mom will be like, oh, you were brilliant, you were fantastic. If I concede, what were the defense doing? It was defense's fault. So you get that in families, and then but at the end of the day, the coaches are the ones that account. They pick you. They're the ones that you need to make an influence on, and it's about having those conversations, good and bad. So if you play really well, it doesn't mean you don't have to have a conversation. It's the same as, like, you don't go to the coaches all the time when you're playing poorly and asking why. But it's important at both points in your career is to reflect of, well, why was I playing so well, for maybe when you start maybe having a decrease in maybe performances, and what was I doing well then, and am I not maybe doing those things now? So there's lots of things, but I think having conversations and communications with the people who are going to help you on your journey are so important.
And there's some big messages in there, I think, that come out from what you've just said around having the resilience to be able to really keep pushing, to have the self-belief in what you're really good at, to get you to your next club or the next move that you need to make. And I'll hopefully a coach and manager will see that strength and really see how it adds value to their team, and ultimately controlling the controllables. There's only a certain amount you can control, and then there'll be external factors that you can't let affect you, and that's so I think there's some brilliant messages in there. So you say you then go on to Notts County, and reunited back with Rick. What sort of influence did Rick have on you as a goalkeeper in terms of in the team environment?
He was massive on team, and I think that he was probably a really, really good one for looking at the strengths of what the team was. So one of my strengths is my distribution. We collectively as a team, we weren't fantastic, but we knew that if we could defend very well and use my strengths and other strengths to counterattack, that would be the type of team that we were. And he thought we would be able to set up brilliant for that. And we were actually really successful. My first or second season, I think we conceded nearly the fewest amount of goals in the league. We finished about mid-table because we also didn't score many either. That was no detriment to the guys up front, but they spend so much time defending that's just how we were going to be. But defensively, we were very good and very hard to break down. We didn't concede a lot of goals at all, and that was kind of through what he wanted to do in his vision. But he was really good at like making sure as a person you were good. He was very good at people managing, and just making sure everyone was all right, because it was difficult. People still worked. People were studying, and even though we were full time, it was Notts County didn't have the greatest amounts of money, so it was important that other players that still had, like, I remember Bradders, she still worked in a care home with her dad, and we still had to like manage those things, but the club were investing quite well. So yeah, I think we worked really effectively. I think I got in team of the year one year. Like I say, we conceded the least amount of goals. We had a really good run and got an FA Cup final. So yeah, and Conti Cup final. So he managed to recruit people by being a really good people person and getting the best out of making you want to fight for him. I think that was it. The team, we weren't maybe coached or technically brilliant, but we just fought so hard for each other on the pitch. Not to lose and not to let him down, and that's what he was really good at, and probably is still really good at. I know he's coaching; he coaches in youth level now, but he was just fantastic at bringing the best out of people, and we had a really good team spirit. And like I say, I played so much. I played most, if not every game, unless I was injured. So for that amount of time that I was playing was fantastic, and absolutely loved it. And unfortunately, we got to a point where Notts County was struggling men's wise, and unfortunately the women's team took a hit, and a new chairman come in and said that they didn't want to have a women's team anymore, and we were disbanded. So yeah, we again went from preparing for an FA Cup game at the start of the season on the Sunday, so this was the Friday, to being in a meeting and told that we wouldn't be playing on the Sunday or travelling to Arsenal, that we had the team effectively didn't exist anymore.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a very interesting time. There's lots of tears, lots of kind of, what do I do next? Obviously, a lot of the girls have families, have mortgages, have stuff to pay. So yeah, it was a crazy, and we were in the middle of like the spring series, so we were changing from winter to summer, from summer to winter league. So we had this kind of mini spring series, it was called. So the league finished in the September the year before, and we had a January to May kind of mini season where everyone played each other. I think it was once or something crazy like that, and then it was like and then we'd start again in the following September as a winter league that would follow the men's. So yeah, we were just about to start that, and then so within 2 days I got a call from Stuart Searle, the goalkeeper coach at Chelsea. They'd had 2 injuries to their goalkeepers, and effectively had 18-year-old Fran Kitchen about to tackle her first league, and they said, "Look, would you come and sign back at Chelsea and work with myself and Emma again?"
Yeah.
And at the time, I was kind of like, "Ooh, this is going to be interesting," because every time we played Chelsea for Notts, like, I wanted to prove a point, because Emma was the manager the whole time I was at Notts. So every time we played Chelsea, I was like, I am going to prove to her that it was a mistake and whatever. And I remember I always used to play really well. And to be fair to her, we always used to, at the end, she'd always say, like, "Well done, you had a really good game." And then when she called me and said, "We'd love to sign you again," after Stu did, I snapped it up. I said, "Well, I've got nothing else to lose, really. I've got no club at this point." I was like, "You're doing me a favour," because I think we had, like, I don't even know if we had a major competition that year. I can't remember what year it was, but I was like, "Look, I need games because I need to at least put myself on the map to get a team at the end of this spring series." And we only went and won the thing, didn't we? So we won the spring series, had a really good. I think we played about 6 games. I think we won all but one. And yeah, won that league, and I got offered a 2-year deal to sign back with the club that I guess it started with back in the day. So it was crazy how it did a full circle. But what Emma had done in those 4 years was exactly what she'd said she was going to do. when she first started her ambitions. The club had had a first year in Champions League, had won a league, had won an FA Cup, and yeah, she was true to her word in what she'd done. And maybe I wouldn't have fit in at that point, but she said based on how mature I was in the spring series and how much I'd grown up and developed, that she felt that I was ready to be part of what her ambitions were going forward for Chelsea. So I guess trying to prove myself against her had paid off.
I think, but then you go back to the message we were talking about resilience and keep going in the direction that you need to go in to get to where you want to get to, and that's evidence, that's proof that if you have the capability to do that as a goalkeeper, as a player, then it does get recognised. And I think that's a great story that you've ended up back at that point. Taking back in.
And it was one of the things she said, I remember at the end of when we won it, she was like, it's strange it happened. And she was like, I don't regret what I did. And I'm kind of like, really? But obviously, like, she's honest with what she does. But she was like, for some reason, I knew our paths would cross again, and I don't know why. But here we are now. And like I say, it's just been a crazy journey. But yeah, it's moments like that you look back on and think, if I'd have just give up, if I'd have thrown in the towel, if I'd thrown my toys out the pram, if I'd have been a bad person about it, because all the political things that happen, you forget on that journey. Like, women's football is small, football is small. Like, it takes you to say one thing, speak out of turn, or be derogatory in that moment, or whatever it was. And I could have, the amount of emotions I was feeling at that point, like I was like, I don't ever want to speak to her again. I don't want to see her again. Like, I would never play for her again, all this kind of stuff. Yet 4 years later, or 3 years later, whenever it was, you have that time to process it all. And you think, well, actually, like, the reason she did it was because she felt at that time I wasn't, and I probably wasn't, based on my reaction back then, how I looked at her was and how I reacted. I probably wasn't mature. I wasn't as grown up maybe as I thought I was. I wasn't maybe in the right place to go on a Champions League or an FA Cup journey with a team that was all about winning, and it was kind of dog eat dog. But now I am, through lots of different experiences, able to process those things. And it's put me in a better position, because at the same time I was able to come up to be a good person about it, which is huge. Like, that you forget that, like, we are people, and how much of your personality is reflected in how you play and how you're looked upon as a teammate, as a person that's going to be employed to be part of that team, and needs to be there in the highs and the lows, and how are you going to be able to support the group and play a role. Like, you're not just a footballer. So yeah, I think that's always in my mind, that how I reflect myself as a person to everyone can and will have an effect later on down the line, and whether that's in football or out of football. I think that I've always tried to maintain a good level of respect throughout the game. So hopefully that works out.
No, it's good. It's great self-awareness.
Yeah, you have to be like it, and it's easy. Like, you forget, like, that people will play a part in your career further down the line, and you don't want to have people sat around a table saying, "Well, actually, when I dealt with that person, she was terrible," and that could actually be you getting a make or break in a job further down the line, whether that's in a job in a team, as a player in that team, as a person that they want to recruit, or whether that's further down the line because you need to work, whether it's for the FA or for Chelsea in a different capacity. Like, you do not want to have your name put about for all the wrong reasons. And I think that you can forget about that sometimes. Do it privately, have them conversations with your mum and dad down the phone that you're devastated and all that. But as for stuff in the media or for outlooks or directly, I think there's a time and a place for that.
No, that's a great message. Just two bits just to tie up this section was just around. One was, you mentioned the FA Cup Finals a couple of times, obviously, that you've been involved in at the club you've been at. Obviously, a high pressure game, a game where there's obviously big expectation, big venues, big crowds, televised. How did you approach those games? How did you prepare yourself to perform in the way that you needed to perform?
I would probably say the first one, I was absolutely beeping myself. You can put that on the camera, because it was I was playing for Leeds at the time, and it was against Arsenal, and Arsenal at the time were like, have just come off the back of winning like the quadruple or whatever. And we were Leeds, I think we were in our second season maybe. and it was a boiling hot day. It was at Notts Forest, and we'd sold out. It was like 25,000 Notts Forest. It was, for some reason, it was like, say, regular time, early May, and it was about 20 degrees. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like, we're going to defend for our lives in this heat. And we did. Like, the crowd was unbelievable. It's the biggest crowd I've ever played in front of. And I think I'd say I was 20, 21. And I just thought, this is the best thing ever, like walking out, red carpet, handshakes. Like, it just felt so legit, like family in the crowd, people watching. I think it was on BBC. And first half we went in 0-0, and I think I'd done about 20 goal kicks. I think I'd made about 30 saves or something crazy. Like, the stats were crazy. And I come in at half time, and I was like, guys, like, what is going on? Like, I was like spent. Like, they'd just been relentless. Arsenal had just come at us all first half, and we just couldn't stop them. They were going round us, through us, over us. Like, it was crazy. And the fact that we were 0-0, like, was like some sort of miracle, really. And they ended up beating us 4-0 or 4-1, I think it was. And I ended up getting man of the match. Like, how does a goalkeeper that gets like beat like 4 times? But I think it was like 30, I think it was 40 shots and like 25 on target or something like that. And it was only so that kind of paints the picture of the sort of game it was. And I remember standing with a bottle of champagne at the end, being like, with my runners-up medal, just absolutely shattered. Like, couldn't even like take in what had happened, really. But yeah, I think that really put my name on the map. And a lot of the girls went out afterwards, and I had to go. I think we were playing like Bulgaria or Belarus. And I remember and Brownie was actually commentating on the game. And she was just like, you had an incredible game. And for me, I was like buzzing, because I was like, she sat here telling me how, like, and this used to be my coach. She's like 13 goalkeeper and whatever. And like, it was, social media wasn't that big back then. But I just remember, like, it was just class. Like, and I just felt like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is like the big time. This is what, like, the feeling afterwards, even though we'd lost, like, the fact that playing in front of that many people, like, was just the coolest thing, and something that I guess really happens in women's football. And I guess that's why the FA Cup is so special, because it's always generated such a big crowd, which is what we haven't been used to. That was probably the first taste. So after that, I was like, right, I need to get in a team that gets to more finals, because this is great. Like, this is what I want to be doing. And then when we won our first cup, the League Cup, we played it at Rochdale, and I think there was about 2,000 people there. It was a complete contrast. It was freezing cold. I remember they were close to calling the game off. It was that cold, half the pitch was frozen. But we managed to beat Everton, and just lifting that trophy with Ellen and Steph and Jess Clark and stuff. Like, that was our first taste of silverware. But yeah, since then, like, being to a couple of cup finals with a couple of runners-up medals, but joining a team like Chelsea, you know, you're not far away from getting some gold. And I was ready to turn those silvers into gold medals, because I'd had enough of being second place. And thankfully, there I was, stood probably, like, say, one of the proudest moments of my life, even though I didn't play, was the fact that, like, my mum and dad were able to watch me lift the FA Cup. My gran and granddad were there as well, and unfortunately, like, I lost my mum the year after. No, that summer I lost her, but she got to see me, like obviously it's like the pinnacle of your career, like lifting a trophy, but to do it at Wembley. And my mum and dad said afterwards, when I was up there, she was just like, I don't know how you've done this, but like, when you were a kid, so when you were little, I used to come in and be like, one day I'm going to play at Wembley, and mum and dad were like, we just used to laugh, because there was like not a cat in hell's chance like you would play at Wembley. Like, yeah, maybe in some like little tournament that you've won a competition for, but a girl or a woman playing at Wembley was just not heard of. And there I was, like, stood like on the red carpet with the trophy, like celebrating with my teammates. Like, it's just like, say, things like that. It's just like mad how it happens, but it's just like, say, playing at Wembley is like one of the most honourable things you can do as a footballer. I think it's the pinnacle for us, and being able to stand there and with the trophy, mum and dad watching, like, it was class. So, yeah,
it's interesting hearing you talk about, obviously, the highs of playing in front of a crowd, and then having to go the following week to play against a smaller crowd. But your life as an elite player, as a professional goalkeeper, is that you've still got that level of performance has still got to be the same. Like, the high standards still have to stay the same. You can't afford to drop off. And
no,
We
that's
probably
it. Like
experience it now at international level, don't we, as well?
yeah, and that's it. Like for us, I know there's a big thing about playing behind closed doors at the minute with the whole coronavirus thing. But I'm like, we kind of, as women's footballers, we spent a lot of our time playing behind closed doors with just like a couple of lads and these dogs, like people walking their dogs around. So for us, not a lot. And it still happens when you go to lots of countries and play internationally now. There's not that bigger crowds, and it is really different. Like you go from the massive highs of 45,000 to potentially some clubs only having 400 or 500 at a game, and the differences. But again, it's like I've always, something I've learned is that like I always prepare the same. People are like, oh, what do you do to prepare for a big game? Like I don't do anything different. Like every game is just as important for me. It has to be, like, because one, like I've had that many injuries, it could always be a last. Two, like I've been left out of squads and dropped, like it could be a last. So I'm like, I just need to give everything for every game, and it is very cliche to say that, but it is. It's like, and it's such an honor to be able to step on that pitch. And I guess when you come to this end of your career and you start reflecting on highs and lows and what it's felt like during games, like nothing. And even in this time now when we're not able to get on a pitch, you miss the buzz. Like I know that, speaking to the girls that have retired, like the buzz you get from crossing that white line, whether it was like there's 10 people watching or 10,000 or 100,000 people watching, never changes. You're still I'm still, me and Jill laugh all the time, like we're still like little girls. Like it's like being like Peter Pan. You don't grow up. Like inside of you, you're still like a kid running around on the pitch with your mates, but your body's just getting older, so you just feel it more. But it's just like we do that. We have the most unbelievable job, and I don't think I'll ever take it for granted, like crossing that white line, because it's just such a special thing. And obviously it becomes more special in bigger tournaments and bigger occasions, but the whole thought of just going on and being able to play football with some of like my best mates is it's just like
incredible.
the best job in the world.
Yeah, I have to say that when and I will talk about the England stuff in a minute, but when we stand on the sideline and we're about to sing the anthem, and you look at the players in the line on the pitch, and I always stand there and I look directly at whether it's you or whether it's the other keepers, and I just look along the line and look at everyone's faces, and it always astounds me how calm and composed that you look. Your ability to be able to step onto the big stage and look like it's not phasing you. Now that you might feel like that, or you might not. Underneath it might be there might be nerves there, which is again for people watching is totally natural thing to have, and probably you'd have to worry more if you didn't have that.
Huge. And I think that's, again, it's the nerves. You're more nervous obviously the earlier you are, like as you get older and you gain more experience, like you figure out how to deal with those things now, whether that's an opponent or a team or there's a crowd or there's certain people watching or whatever. Like as you experience more and more of that, it just becomes a bit of like white noise. But the initial like first one, like it can be very daunting, but you just have to, like you say, it's like, I guess it's like you're an actor as such. Like you have to you're there to not put on a show, but like you have to look like you feel like
Game
even
face.
if inside, and it's, for me, it just comes down to preparation. Like I don't think the games where I've been most nervous or most like I've felt my emotion take over more is games where I've probably been like, oh my God, I haven't trained as much as I needed to this week. Oh my God. And it's just come down to complete preparation. Like if I feel like I've done all I can that week, or I've done everything I usually do and everything's in line and I feel like I'm ready, then it doesn't matter whether I'm stepping in front of 50,000 people or five people. Like I'm ready, I'm prepared for what's about to come in that 90 minutes. So I think the reason why I feel so calm in those moments now is that because I have my routine, I know what I need to do in order to feel that way, and nothing ever changes around that. And yes, again, it comes down to controlling the controllables. I know what I have to do to get myself ready for that game on Sunday, regardless who it's against, regardless it's a World Cup or it's a friendly game as such. Like I know I've done all I've can, and I feel prepared and ready. And at the end of the day, it's 11v11. Yes, it might go to 10v11 like it did in the World Cup, but most of the time you're ready for what is going to be just 11 people against 11 people, and your team are ready. And I think that at an international level, like you feel most prepared because you know you're at the pinnacle, and you know that everything's so finely tuned and nitpicked. Like whether it's the opposition analysis, whether it's the prep you do through the week, like you are at the pinnacle of your career, and those people that are surrounding you, the coaching staff, the players, are the best at what they do, so they're preparing you the best way possible. So I almost feel like I feel even better than I normally would at club, because I'm so ready, because I'm just like, well, look, I'm training with the best people in the country. Like, I'm ready for whatever's going to be thrown at me. So yeah, it's just like, I think preparation is huge for me, and I feel so like less nervous I do, which is crazy really, probably at national level, than I do at club, because I'm just so ready for those moments. And working at Chelsea now, like you train at such a level, like I probably feel similar to what I do. I just feel like I'm so prepared for anything that I feel like crossing that white line, I am virtually prepared for anything. So therefore, I'm like, right, like, come on, throw it at me. I'm almost like Craven, like, come on, give me shots, give me shots. Yeah, we need some action. And I think that's what it comes down to, is dealing with those moments and feeling the most prepared you can.
Yeah, and I was going to say, obviously, you're doing some brilliant things for Chelsea at the moment, and as a team, you're doing some great things. I wanted to just talk about Stu Searle. Obviously, you've mentioned him previously in the conversation, but I suppose from a goalkeeper coach's point of view, goalkeeper coaches that might be watching, I think he would have had a big impact in how you play the game, how you approach the game, how you train, etc. What insight can you give us into the way Stu works with you and the impact
Trade secrets.
No, don't give too much away.
Stu's like probably one of the best coaches, goalkeeping coaches I've ever worked with. Like, he is, the detail he puts in is phenomenal. But I think there's been a big change, I think, in goalkeeping, especially in the women's game in the past few years. And I think Lee Kendall was one that started with it. I think, obviously, Mace, you probably are aware of the changes of you switched maybe from men's football to women's football. And Stu is a big advocate for that. It's just kind of how the game has... Look, a lot of men's coaches come from the men's game into the women's game and try to coach exactly the same, which is fine to an extent. But a lot of the conversations that I remember having with Lee at the time, it was Lee Kensers, who I worked with when I was at Notts County, and stuff that I could take back to club where I didn't really have a goalkeeping coach, was kind of how we work around the goal, how we can take advantage of being smaller and dealing with our area, defending space. When we're not 6'5", like as tall as some of the men's goalkeepers, how we deal with coming through bodies, or do we stay on our line? How do we use our advantage as being agile or quick, rather than being tall and strong? Lots of different things like that. And I think what yourself, Lee Kendall did, Mark Mason has, Leanne Hall, people that have been in the women's game for a long time, have really utilised and respected those things, and then taken them to another level. And I know that Stu works diligently to work on video footage, whether it's of myself or goalkeepers that are similar to myself in the men's game. And how can we take stuff from them, and how do they defend their area, defend their goal if they're smaller in stature? So I remember we've spoke about Lloris, and if I have similar attributes to him, he's not the biggest, he's not the tallest, he's not the widest, but how does he deal with crosses? How does he defend his line? How does he defend space in front of him? All those kinds of different things. And then how can we implement that? So how can you implement it? By conversations that we have, and then taking that into club, because that's ultimately, we have such little contact time at international. We're effectively always getting prepared for games. We don't have a lot of opportunity to coach you as much as you probably crave it. You have small time blocks. A lot of it's done, and a lot of it we have to do away from international, and working with Stu and yourself together, because at the end of the day, we're all collectively trying to make me a better goalkeeper, which makes our teams better teams, and winning teams, whether it's England or Chelsea. So a lot of those conversations have to be had so they can be implemented at club. And Stuart's a big advocate for not just working with footballs. We work with tennis balls. We have a ping pong machine that fires out stuff that we have to catch for reactions. We have the catch it nets to do rebound stuff and reaction stuff. We have the blowout, the big blow up, crossing things to deal with coming through bodies. But then it's always about kind of the individual. So me and Bergie at Chelsea are different goalkeepers. We're not the same. We're not coached exactly the same. We will strip things back, and Stu and most goalkeeping coaches that I've worked with respect the fact that we're slightly different, and we will make saves in different ways, but effectively we're still making a save. So it's it's not about doing something wrong if the ball's kept out the net. It's about kind of adapting, and the way I do it is different, maybe different to Berg's. In some respects it will be the same, but how we travel along our goal line, how we spread ourselves, how we attack the ball are different. So that's respecting those but making those better. and using each other's strengths to make each other better, and weaknesses as well to get better. So what do I do not as well as Bergs that she can help me with, and what can I learn from her in sessions? So we have a video space called Huddle, where we can watch sessions back, and I can watch her and she can watch me, etc. And how do I travel across the goal, and how can she do that, or whatever. And it's just kind of learning. Like, I'm still like 32 and I'm still learning. I still have so much to learn, and that's probably the beauty of working with different goalkeeping coaches, and working with yourself and Stuart are different goalkeeper coaches, but I can still learn so much of both of you. And Stu's just, he's really one for just wanting to take stuff to the next level. I'm very lucky, and we have a very blessed goalkeeping group, a very good unit. And we're always pushing each other, always wanting to explore. And it's so weird because I feel like I don't play as much at club as I did probably when I was at Notts County, but I think I'm 10 times a better goalkeeper, which is crazy because but it's through working every day on the pitch with someone like Stu, and then going away on international and bringing stuff that how can I get better at international, it's going to make me better at club, and me pushing Bergie, Bergie pushing me. And Stu facilitates that, and he listens. We sit down, have conversations about what I want to get better at, or what I am good at, but making that even better. So like I spoke before about having a strength and not taking that away from me, on just being like, well, that's a strength, so we don't need to work on that because that's what you're good at. Let's work on all the other stuff. Like what separates me from Karen Bardsley, Ellie Roebuck, Mary Earps, etc., and Sandy MacGyver, what separates me from them, and make sure that them things keep separating me from them, but also elevate the stuff that they are good at and make those things better. So yeah, it's about always and Stu's so like receptive to that, and I guess that's where we're so blessed at, like our contact time's so good at club. We're in 6 days a week, and we get to learn and use that. And he just loves coaching, like yourself. It's just like he loves to and loves to see people getting better, and we'll go to all these mad conferences and come back with like, right, let's try this, I've seen this online. And he's loving it at the minute, because now he gets to sit on YouTube and be like, right, what can I give the girls to, like, she said,
watch webinars,
things, throwing tennis balls off walls, and he's got his wife demonstrating, sending some videos, and he's like, poor Michelle. But yeah, he's just one that Brilliant. He's just a really good guy, and he just wants us all to do well. Obviously, he's there to do a job for Chelsea and to make us successful. And if you've got a good goalkeeper or a good couple of goalkeepers, you're halfway there to if you say if you don't concede goals, then you're halfway to doing what you want to achieve. So I'm blessed to work with him, and he's been brilliant for me and brilliant for the club, I think.